The funeral was supposed to be a moment of quiet grief, a time to say goodbye, to honor the man who had been my husband, my partner in life and in business. But instead, it became the stage for a battle I never saw coming. I stood near the casket, my hands clutching a folded tissue, my mind still struggling to accept the reality of his absence. The scent of fresh flowers mixed with the lingering warmth of the people who had come to pay their respects. Friends, colleagues, and family members exchanged hushed condolences, their words a blur against the overwhelming weight of my grief. Then, just as the crowd began to thin, I saw them. My in-laws. I hadn't seen them in 8 years. Not since the night they made it clear that my husband, their own son, would never measure up to his older brother in their eyes. And yet, here they were, standing in the dim light of the funeral home, their presence casting a shadow over what was already the darkest day of my life. At first, they approached cautiously, their faces somber, their words laced with feigned sympathy. They spoke of regret, of missed time, of how they had only wanted the best for their son. I listened, my heart hammering against my ribs, knowing there had to be more. And then, like a snake shedding its disguise, the truth slithered out. "We need to talk about the company," my mother-in-law said, her voice smooth but firm. "And the house," my father-in-law added, his expression tightening. "It's too big for a widow with no children. We could make better use of it." The room seemed to tilt. My grief, raw and bleeding, sharpened into something else, something colder. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears as their words settled in. They weren't here to mourn. They weren't here to remember the son they had ignored for years. They were here to claim what they believed was theirs. I took a slow breath, my fingers curling into the fabric of my dress. They had no idea what my husband had done to prepare for this. They had no idea that he had seen this moment coming. And they had no idea that I held the one thing that would change everything. Their words echoed in my ears long after they had left the funeral home. I sat in my car, staring blankly at the steering wheel, my hands trembling with rage and disbelief. How could they? How could they come here, after 8 years of silence, only to demand what wasn't theirs? I knew their audacity shouldn't have surprised me. The truth was, my in-laws had never truly seen my husband as an equal to his brother. From the very beginning, they had favored him, the golden child, the son who could do no wrong. My husband, on the other hand, had always been the underdog in his own family. He worked harder, pushed himself further, and yet no matter what he accomplished, it was never enough for them. I remembered the first time I truly saw it, on a cold December evening, 8 years ago. It was Christmas dinner at my in-laws' house, and we had just secured our first major contract for the recycling company. My husband was glowing with pride, excited to share the news. But before he could even finish his sentence, his father scoffed. "Oh, so you're still playing around with that little business?" he said, barely looking up from his plate. His mother had simply sighed, shaking her head. "You need to stop trying to compete with your brother." Compete? As if that was what this had all been about. Their words cut through him like a blade. I saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his jaw tightened. He wanted their approval. He had always wanted it. But that night, as we drove home in silence, I think he finally realized he would never get it. We never saw them again after that. But now, they were back. And this time, they weren't just dismissing his achievements. They were trying to take them away. I drove home from the funeral with their threats still hanging in the air. They would take legal action. They had a right to everything their son left behind. They believed they could erase me from his legacy as if I had never been a part of his life. They had no idea how wrong they were. As I stepped into the house we had built together brick by brick, I felt a wave of exhaustion crash over me. Every corner of this place held a memory. The kitchen where we used to cook together, stealing kisses between chopping vegetables. The office where we spent late nights strategizing about the company. The couch where he would rest his head on my lap after long days, tracing circles on, my knee absent-mindedly. I sank into his chair, staring at the screen of his laptop. And then I remembered. The video. A month before he passed, my husband had recorded a message for his parents. At the time, I thought he was just being overly cautious. He had always been meticulous, planning for every possibility. But now, as I stared at the file on the screen, I realized how well he had known them. With trembling hands, I pressed play. There he was, dressed in his favorite suit, sitting in his hospital bed, looking thinner than I wanted to remember. But his voice was steady, his gaze unwavering. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I guess you've finally decided I was worth something after all." I swallowed hard. You never believed in me. Not when I was a kid, not when I started my business, not even when I was dying. He paused, exhaling slowly. "And yet here you are. Not because you miss me, not because you wish you had been there for me, but because now, suddenly, you think what I built belongs to you." Tears burned my eyes as I listened. "You don't get to claim my legacy just because I'm not here to stop you. That's why I made sure everything is legally taken care of. Every document is signed, every decision made with a clear mind. And if you think for a second that you can intimidate my wife, you're making the same mistake you always made about me." He leaned forward slightly. "You underestimated me." The video ended. I sat there, the room silent, except for the sound of my own breathing. They had no idea what was coming for them. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of emails and texts from my in-laws. They were escalating. They had already contacted their lawyer, claiming they had a rightful claim to my husband's estate. I forwarded everything to my own legal team, who assured me that I had nothing to worry about. "They have no case," my lawyer said, "but keep every message. It'll only help you if they actually take this to court." Then they showed up at my company. Storming into the lobby, they demanded to meet with the board, as if we were some massive corporation. Our receptionist, confused but professional, informed them that there was no board. This was a private business, co-owned by my husband and me. That only seemed to enrage them more. "You stole everything from our son?" my father-in-law shouted. "You manipulated him into cutting us out of his life." I stepped out of my office and walked toward them, my heart pounding. "I stole nothing," I said calmly, "and you should leave before I have you removed." Their faces twisted in anger. "We'll see you in court," my mother-in-law hissed. I smiled, but it wasn't out of amusement. It was because I knew something they didn't. I had a video waiting for them. 2 weeks later, as I was preparing for the inevitable legal battle, I received a message from someone I never expected. My brother-in-law. He asked if we could talk. At first, I considered ignoring him, but something told me I needed to hear him out. When he arrived at my house, he looked different. He had lost weight, and for the first time, he didn't reek of alcohol. He seemed remorseful. "I need to tell you something," he said hesitantly. "Mom and Dad, they're going to make things ugly. They're planning to spread lies about you. Say that my brother borrowed money from them to start the business." I stared at him. "That's not true." "I know," he admitted, looking ashamed. "But they don't care about the truth. They just want control." For the first time, I saw the damage our in-laws had done, not just to my husband, but to his brother as well. "They did this to both of you," I said softly. He nodded. "And I'm done letting them control me." Then he did something I never expected. "I'll testify against them," he said. When the court date finally arrived, I sat in the courtroom, calm and prepared. My husband's video played for everyone to see. The room was silent as his parents listened to his final words, the words they could never argue against. The judge ruled in my favor. My in-laws lost everything. As they stormed out humiliated, my brother-in-law and I locked eyes. There was no triumph in his expression, only relief. When it was all over, I walked back into my home, knowing that I had done what my husband had asked of me. I had protected our dream. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. He would have been proud. Losing someone you love is one of the hardest things in the world. But what I've learned is this: love doesn't just disappear. It stays. In the things you built together, in the people who remember them, in the impact they left behind. And sometimes, the best way to honor someone's memory is to keep fighting for what they believed in. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.